In this video, we're going to revisit some of the conversations we had on the podcast this year in regards to how someone would go from an entry-level position to becoming an executive inside of a company. I set up these conversations by letting our guests know about an interaction I had with some friends that are in corporate jobs, mentioning some observations about how some of the executives seem to have gotten into those positions more based upon the relationships that they had with others in the executive roles already, rather than their experience there. And it seemed that there was a hard, kind of impossible road to get into that executive role. So I wanted to ask them, as guys who have been there, who started at the bottom, worked their way into that executive role, how they did it, and then how they would lay out the roadmap for someone else trying to do the same.
So one of the things to keep in mind is picture climbing a mountain. So you climb up 100 feet and you're starting to see a little of the forest. And you climb up 500 feet and you're getting a really good view. And say you keep climbing and you get up and you're in Colorado and you do a 14er. And then you're standing up and you can see everything and you're looking all around and you're seeing a vision of everything. And that's what you have to realize when you're starting out in a business is you're at 100 feet and your boss is maybe at 500 feet. And the other executives are further up the mountain, and a lot of them are standing on top of the mountain seeing the whole picture. So decisions they make you might think are stupid, but you can't see the next valley over that there's a dam about to break. So I think it's important to understand that, yes, you're going to have, I've told my kids this, you're not going to have a whole lot of good bosses in your life. Just understand that. There's good businesses and there's good bosses, but you're going to, especially in a large organization, you're going to have that. And yeah, there's a certain amount of who you know, but understand you can do that too. Make sure you're known in the business and make sure that in that business they look at you as, hey, that's a guy, that's a stand-up guy, or that guy, his work is good. Not perfect, because don't get stuck in perfectionism, but man, he does excellent work. And getting to know people, so I say it's who you know in that way. Yeah, there's who you know in another way, like, hey, my cousin needs a job. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we'll have him do this.
But so you're putting the responsibility of the relationship back on the person rather than saying, hey, it's not just because those two were buddies, it's because that guy didn't know that guy, but he was in the circles and he made himself available through his good work.
Yeah, and I've seen in business, I've seen a CEO come in and hire guys who were competent, but they were really college friends, and now they're like 30 years on, and none of them did well. So, if you're an executive and you're thinking about hiring a friend, you need to be really careful, because you're not going to see clearly that person. So, to an executive, you say, think really hard about, your college buddy who seems to be what you're looking for. Maybe you should ask some other folks who'll tell you that, give you a real perspective. But if you're at that bottom level, be known. What does the Bible say about a good reputation? The Bible tells us that a good reputation is worth lots and lots of gold. So having a good reputation inside of the business is really important. You don't want to be known as a slacker, or that guy gets here on the dot and leaves on the dot. That always bothers me. I get guys that they come in, say it's supposed to be in at 7. They arrive, they come running in at 7. I'm like, what if you had one extra light? Mm-hmm. But the guys there that 20 till 7, and he's getting ready to work, and he's maybe having a cup of coffee, but he's, I'm like, you know what? This guy's here. He's not like, and he's not putting his track shoes on at 4, ready to run out at 4 in 3 seconds. So don't be known as that guy. Be known as the guy who comes and does really hard work. But I don't think you should be known as the guy who's married to the job either. I don't think that's a biblical perspective on work. So remember, Psalm was it 127 or 27 says he gives to his beloved in their sleep. And you need to understand that God can bless us for our hard work, even in our sleep. Don't stay up all night working. But yeah, so there might be stuff you disagree with your boss, or you look at him, you're like, learn from that. Say, that's not going to be me when I'm there. And, or you might figure out, he had to be like that for this reason. So give them a little slack and realize that sometimes their experience you'll see the wisdom in their experience when you're a little older. It's like, when you're kids, you're like, I didn't realize how smart my dad was until I was 30. It's like, same thing. But yeah, you're going to have that. I mean, we're in a broken world, and businesses, there's a lot of broken people in business, and you're just going to see a lot of that. And some of it you can't write. You can certainly try to move to the next group if the job opening comes, but some of it, learning to work under a difficult boss, or even an unrighteous boss, there's a lot to be learned. First Peter talks about that. Joseph had a little experience with that, and he did okay. So, don't be too focused on your boss's shortcomings.
Gotcha.
Focus on your work.
I'll speak specifically for CTO because that's the area that I would be most familiar with. And I'm sure a lot of people would answer this differently. So this is just sort of my own track, my experience. So maybe starting by talking about the negatives, since you did that as well. I've seen some people at the top of the technical tree that I had a hard time seeing why they were there. So sometimes that was they didn't have a good appreciation of software technology itself. And so it made it really hard to understand decisions they were making, which clearly looked like they didn't understand the technology. So if you're going to lead a team with technology, it seems it's important you understand it to some level. Now, things get out of date, like you pointed out, and there's no way you can keep up with everything. There's just no way. But understanding technology at some level is important. Another thing I've run into is personality. I guess I can leave that at that. So some people are made to interact with other people, and some people aren't. Some people understand what it means to lead and inspire people, and some don't. So there's a number of things like that. So I guess what I've seen that's most successful is someone that wants to be a CTO starts out actually being a software developer themselves for a number of years. So it's not 6 months, it's not 1 year. You have to have a number of years, and preferably a number of different companies, because each company, the software that they produce, the products, the way they work as far as processes and tools, on and on and on, is going to be different. And you gain experience just by being in a different atmosphere like that. And you really need to be able to draw on those differences, because I've seen some people where they've only been in one place and they assume the world works like that, or that's the best way to work. And it really isn't. There's things of value there, and there's things of value somewhere else, and you need to be able to draw on those and recognize there's going to be even more that you don't know. Another thing that's important is being a lifelong learner. You must invest in your career. So I always tell young people, you don't stop buying books now that you're out of school on your trade, on software in this case. Continued buying books, look stuff up online courses, paid courses. You must be continually investing in your career. So I made a goal some time back where I read 2 books on average a month. Now, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 months of nothing, but then, the third month, maybe I'll finish like 4 books, something like that. Because I've always got multiple going at once. But, you've probably read a lot of these things. Successful people in leadership roles or successful people, period, read all the time. You're always reading, always learning. So that's important. And then the next thing is, and this is where it gets a little bit harder, but a CTO or CIO needs to have a much broader view of what's going on. So like my path was up the software development channel. Well, when I was talking about the diligence work, I mentioned there were 6 different channels, and that was just one of them. And so somehow you would need to start branching out. First working alongside or partnering with those other teams, and then getting into roles where you are providing more influence and input into those other teams so that you become more well-versed and experienced in infrastructure type things and security type things and organization design and understanding basic accounting principles and that kind of stuff. So you need to be able to start learning all those things along the way as well. And sometimes it's really hard. In bigger companies, you're going to be so pigeonholed that you just can't very easily. So you have to be really proactive and get out there and work alongside those people, make friends, take them to lunch, all that kind of stuff. In smaller companies, it becomes a little bit easier to do that. But you have to be able to do that because, like I said, sometimes what I'm seeing at that top level person is they don't have that broad experience. And that's a common thing I'll say is this person lacks the breadth and depth of experience to be able to be the senior level technology leader. They lack experience in, and I'll just list them out kind of a thing. So you need to have that. And then the next thing, and this is the hardest one to learn, is the personality side of things. So some people, and it's usually early on in their growing up years, formative years, you become more personable. You understand how to interact with people. You have built-in humility, respect for other people, communication skills, EQ as they call it, emotional quotient or something. Building upon those things, and those are books you should be reading too. And those are ones that I read all the time as well, or podcasts. You have to be a good people person to be a leader, period. You just do. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing to learn. That is the hardest thing to learn because you can't get it just from a book or taking a class. When I was young, I was the worst as far as that goes. So it is something you can learn over time, but it is something that just takes a lot of time, and you have to have the right friendships of people that will call you on it and say, you're being a jerk today. Yeah. And there are a few times in my life that I vividly remember where someone came up and said, you are not being a good friend to these people, and this, that, and the other, and they'd say, let me help you with that. And those were turning points in my life that allowed me to get to where I am today, and I still have a long ways to go, but that personality is a big key to it as well. And then the other thing is you need to start being more of a visionary. So it's not just the people and what it is you're building, but it's sort of, it's looking out. So being able to build strategies, build roadmaps, and getting your people within your team to be able to do that as well. Being a good mentor in that, understanding innovation, understanding big picture, and sort of the how things get done rather than just what's being done. Because at that level, you're focusing more on the how than the what. The people below are the ones doing the work and then implementing the how. But continually improving, and how do you get better at your craft, and as a team getting at your craft. Those are all the sort of things that I think go into it, off the top of my head at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a combination of a couple different things. One is you got to want it. Like you want to be you're going to have to be naturally driven to take on more responsibility, right? I mean, if you're just comfortable punching a clock and leaving work at home, or leaving work at the office when you go home and you don't think about it, and that's like and there's nothing wrong with that. That's like how you're wired. Then, you probably shouldn't really try to do that because you're not really wired that way. But if you're wired to try to take on more responsibility and you want to grow, that's, I think, the number one thing you got to have is to be wired that way. Number two, I think you got to constantly be learning. Like, I love learning new things, I think sometimes it drives my wife a little crazy because I'm always trying to bring out, trying different things, and you like, wait, what did you buy now? But to have a constant thirst for knowledge and to learn how to do things, not only just learn what other people are doing, but learn how to do things better. I mean, well, probably let me back up. Very first thing is you got to know the business. You got to understand the business, the company that you're working for. Got to know it inside and out. Learn the numbers. Learn, what customers think. Where are you weak? Where's the competition beating you? You got to really understand that business, and it doesn't mean you have to know how to do every single job at that business. But I mean, you need to understand the business. Have a desire to grow, which means if you get opportunities to take on more responsibility, take it, even if it's something you don't know anything about. Take it. Show initiative, and then have that constant thirst for knowledge where you're constantly learning new things. And you should also be bringing ideas to the table. Saying, hey, I was thinking about our problem with the blah blah blah. What if we did this? You got to show some initiative, bring some ideas to the table, and have that drive to want to grow in your responsibility. I think there's probably more, but that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah. It seems that every once in a while there's this thought that maybe in some of that executive leadership there's a different kind of thought process that happens, or a different lingo that people go through because the scale is different. Would you just attribute that into learning about the business, learning about the position, things like that, and or do you feel like there is a certain business knowledge that you need to be able to be in those positions, or even leadership knowledge to be in those positions?
I think, could you go get an MBA and would that benefit you? Yeah, probably, depending on the organization you're trying to grow into. There is different lingo for sure. I mean, when we joined, we were a small company when we were acquired, and suddenly I was sort of thrust into the executive management team, for the U.S., and they were using a lot of words. I'm like, what the heck is that? Some of it's buzzwords, and buzzwords change, right? I remember first time I heard accretive versus dilutive. I'm like, that's kind of a funny way to say it, but okay, I get it.
What is that?
Accretive means like this helps. This is additive to whatever we're trying to do, and dilutive is like, well, no, it pulls away from. Okay. I'm like, I don't know if anybody uses that anymore. That might be like 2010. So, or even the first time, like where I didn't totally understand the difference between a forecast and a budget, and like this is a publicly traded company. Like forecast is super important. I learned it right away, and actually now we actually produce a budget and a forecast. We update our forecast every month with our business. So, being part of that larger organization, I learned some things that probably most small businesses don't do. Small, medium-sized businesses, but I this actually is really good. I'm going to integrate this into what we're doing, even though,
So forecast budget being one of them. What are a couple others that you recognize?
So sometimes being part of a bigger organization, like you learn things to do, and sometimes you learn things not to do, right? So I learned both lessons, really. But one of the things I learned was about the importance of having meetings that are impactful and meaningful and not just a waste of time. So like when you're part of a bigger organization, you can get pulled in a lot. Like everybody wants to copy you on emails. Everybody wants to invite you to meetings that maybe you don't need to be a part of. And so like at one organization I was part of, I actually got to the point where I was getting invited to so many meetings, not because I'm this great guy or whatever, but because they just invite God and everybody to every meeting for some reason. And so I got to the point where I would start putting blocks of thought time, focus time in my calendar. Leverage your if the calendar is what's blowing up, you got to learn to leverage that tool. So I would constantly, every week I'd go and I'd put blocks of time just so I could think. And so, what people do when they schedule a meeting, they would normally look at everybody. When is everybody free? Well, I know they're never going to block it, put it on that time because I've already blocked it off. And so, you got to learn things like that. Being part of a larger organization, every organization has some, politics, so to speak. And, you can say, I hate office politics. Like, yeah, I understand why people would say that. And I'm not saying you got to love it, but you got to learn how it works. Like, you got to learn how to operate in an environment like that. And so every company you got to learn who the players are and what their goals are. In order to succeed, you can't just put a blind eye to all of that and pretend like it doesn't exist because I don't like it. Well, you don't. Not that you don't have to like it, but you need to understand it so that you can kind of thrive and get to whatever objectives you're looking for as well. And your objectives, by the way, too, like if you're looking to grow in the business, it shouldn't be just for your own sake. It should be to help the business grow. Like if you're aligned with that, that's a good thing. And if it's just all about you, that's not a game I want to play.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for watching this video. Thank you for following along with the podcast this year. We're super excited about what we've got cooking for 2024. That's going to be 2 episodes a month, one with a guest, and then one with myself, MasonOxendale, and Alex Reiki, talking about what we've got going on inside our businesses. So we look forward to seeing you on the next episode and hope that you have a fantastic New Year's.